Hi, guys, and welcome to Rethink by Human Inc. Today, we're really excited to dive into this topic of how to leverage research and research methodologies for strategy and change. And with me today, I have my old colleague, friend, and thought partner, Jerome Axel Brown, who's senior user research manager now with Salesforce. The reason I invited Axel, and I'm so grateful that you accepted to join us from San Francisco. I know it's late evening your time, I believe.
Yes.
So thanks so much for that. The reason I kind of wanted to bring you on is we nerd roughly every 2 weeks. We speak with each other about these kind of topics. And I see this question of where's the world going, where's digital going, how do we go beyond just kind of getting lucky with launching new products, or when we're digitalizing old services, how do we actually understand users better, and how can a deeper empathy, a deeper understanding, which is a big deal in design thinking and in marketing, how can we leverage a deeper understanding, a deeper empathy with customers for company strategy or for product strategy. But before we dive too much into that, Axel, thank you so much for being game to join. Maybe you can give the viewers a feel for kind of your own journey. How did you even end up in such a role? There might be people sitting there saying, "Oh, I wish I had a job like Axel." Maybe younger folks, right, who aspire to get into this space. Was it like you when you were 10? You were like, "I want to be a user research manager." Or how did you end up? What's the story? Maybe share a bit.
Sure, yes. Yeah, it's people call me Jerome Axel Brown, as Chris said. All the firstborn males in my family are named Jerome. So we go by our middle name in my family, not to confuse each other. So I have four brothers and two sisters, and you could say people who in a sense, if you don't want to be friends with me, you call me Jerome. If you want to be friends, call me Axel. Okay. So Chris wants to be friends, it sounds like, so he calls me Axel. He's in the Axel Club, per se. So viewers do refer to me as Axel. Um, Outside of that, yeah, I think some of my kind of core values, even just growing up, small town Texas. My father passed quite early in his youth, and kind of now you're the daddy of the family kind of thing. I never had that kind of direct pressure to be that person, but that was definitely, I was kind of raised that way, right? So, but the values of like definitely community, connection, and hustle is something, and even convening people together are something that I learned quite early. My mom and dad were both entrepreneurs, super middle class, or even low middle class. I learned recently, and just got it done. So, and no one went to college in the family, and people started. Then there's things in our system, whether it be in the U.S. and even abroad, that maybe don't favor certain or keep certain people out. But whether it be education or banking or things like this, but that hustle that I really learned from my father and mother. There's a story of my dad at a very young age. I was very young when he did this kind of basically. We built most of our toys. We learned to kind of use our hands quite early. So there's a TV show, if you can imagine, kind of like an Etsy, or like a very kind of fringe show that sold things online, right? So there's what they basically did. They bought up things from big department stores. You might be familiar with Target or Walmart, and basically they sold these things back to people over the TV. You basically saw them selling the things one item at a time. So my
E-commerce.
dad, yeah, like the kind of early stages of kind of e-commerce, peer-to-peer commerce, if you want to call it. So he bought a bunch of like small electronics that were all broken, and one of the hottest items that year was a big wheel, the Power Wheel, which is basically an electric car that a kid could sit in and drive. So it's all broken. You can imagine all these parts, wheels, chassis, axles everywhere. Not that kind of axle, but the actual axle lying around. So we kind of Franken wheeled and made this Power Wheel out of nothing. And I remember that day on Christmas when we were driving down the street and kicking everyone's butt as we raced down the highway, not the real highway, but the little small kind of side street with the car battery inside of it, the Franken wheel. Yes, it blew up a little bit after we rode it, but what it taught me was, you got to take what you got and kind of build it, and don't worry about kind of what it looks like, or how you made it. Just hustle and get it done. So I got a lot of memories like that of us. So I never felt poor, but definitely was below the poverty line. So there is something about kind of knowing that you have what you need to face the world. I always felt that I had what I need, even though maybe on paper it didn't look like it. But definitely I always thought that. And I've carried that forward. In the pandemic, I think it's been tough a lot of times, but I definitely, that resiliency back then has paid off now. And I can be of support for, the teams I support now, Salesforce, and even traveling abroad and doing things that no one would think of people like me would do. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a nutshell, kind of my background. I'm happy to chat further.
Yeah, and I remember when we met and you joined Human Inc. and you worked with us here in KL. I remember that kind of grit that you had, and you managed to get into Johns Hopkins, which is a quite esteemed institution, right? You were working with the Department of Energy in the U.S. Government, and then you had been even working with some startups in India. So I saw that kind of ability for you to kind of find new career opportunities, and also how you kind of connected with me. I remember you'd been doing user research on me when you did the first interview with Human Inc.
Exactly.
And it's like, this guy really gets me. He's really nice. So you had that kind of hustle, right? And then after you left Human Inc., maybe you want to share a bit of the kind of your journey from working on the consulting side to joining in-house and first with Grab, right? And now with Salesforce. Yeah, maybe share a bit.
I have to give a big shout out to, definitely, I would say I got my start at Human Inc. And I don't say that because I'm talking to Human Inc. folks, but it's definitely carried forward that notion of really starting with connection in everything you do, and bringing that humanness in everything you do in a really practical way. So research again is about convening people, bringing people together around data to move the needle on whether it be a metric or to make a decision or a line around a direction. So Human Inc. I've really learned the kind of practicalities of that. Of course, the startup I had, Open Masters, which is still in existence, that IP helped fuel some of the work we did with Human Inc. So definitely that, but I think the learning curve at Human Inc. was quite fast. And then within Grab, yes, like it was basically applying kind of these concepts of humanness to problems that affect 650 million people in Southeast Asia, whether that be pricing or kind of, how do I navigate in a space where what's the difference between how an auntie and Bandung kind of navigates to the shop for noodles versus the Singaporean banker trying to get to a meeting in Raffles Quay, right? So those are and that insight of the difference between those two kind of personas really led to some big wins for that company in terms of hyper localization. Uber, in a sense, maybe didn't really focus on that as much as Grab did, and Grab was able to out execute and outmaneuver that David and Goliath kind of story. As we all know, Uber invested in Grab in 2018, and I joined right after that in 2019, and really kind of led that hyper localization and deeper into several product verticals. Again, the map business, the matching AI business, as well as the transportation business. But yeah, it's been tough, of course, for Grab, and I can talk about that too. But I'll pause there if you want to kind of keep it moving in a different direction,
Yeah,
or
yeah, no,
what's on
it's
your mind?
super exciting, right? Because I think there's this speaks volumes to the kind of the power of having a deeper understanding of either the individual or the persona, the group of individuals that are like this, in terms of what are their preferences and how can a company serve them better. Last week, I interviewed a guy called Anurag from Axiata Digital Agency, who talked to this kind of opportunity to serve everyone different. That his example was kind of that, you know, in marketing, everyone talks about that single mother of 27 or whatever, right? But actually, she might be a police officer, or she might be a high net worth individual, or she might be married twice, or not married at all, or, you know. So how can we as organizations that design digital services truly understand the difference between different types of customers and even different situations that they're in their day, in their week, in their life, as they maybe also develop over time. So maybe you can share a little bit, what were some of the kind of research practices? Because maybe for some folks who says research, what do you mean? You're buying a report from a marketing research firm or market research firm, or what do you mean by research? Is this some academic exercise? I mean, what was research? What did research mean in Grab, or perhaps in Salesforce where you are now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Research is about outcomes, not features. It's really about that. I think that's the key, is you're trying to move a needle of some sort. You're trying to move a metric. And sometimes metrics sound very big and scary, and they can be, but it's really about alignment in people. A metric is a rallying kind of point for a business and its people inside that business to know how well they're doing to around their what they say they're going to do. In Salesforce, we talk about the V2 MOM, which is every employee, in a sense, makes this thing, and it's very public, right? You know, what's the vision for you? What's the values that underlie that vision? What are the you know, the methods by which you're going to go and achieve that vision, and what are the measures and obstacles around those measures? It sounds kind of funny, but Human Inc. knows about those funny sayings. We used to call it something called an I do art for the folks out there in internet land. What is the intention, desired objective, deal, the agenda, the kind of roles and responsibilities, and the time. Did I get it right, Chris? Did I get it right?
Correct, you got it. I do. Right, spot on. We can put it. We
Gold
can put it in
style.
the chat afterwards. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I
so
still
so
remember.
again, research, yes, it is about moving the needle, but then there's a question of like, okay, great. How do we even come up with what is a good metric for us that we can all get behind? That's a whole kind of really a deep listening to each other. Can't just throw a metric out there and it means nothing. I can remember sometimes at Grab, super data driven company, all of our products are very well instrumented, meaning we have kind of tracking mechanisms within the products in a sense. And this is, again, pretty well known for most consumer companies. It's all about data. But then that data research sometimes metrics tell you the what, right? Like this is the number of rides you have and the number of passengers you have. But then you might see something, a question we had, you know, Grab was known for its super app. First of all, what the heck is super app even mean? And how do we measure what super app is? So that was a project I had to do once. So basically, you know, just, you know, kind of thinking out loud. I can't specifically talk about what I did there, but I can say generally, like, you know, let's say a super app person is someone that's, you know, a boss says, we need to be the best super app company in the world. Research can come in and say, okay, cool. So how do we, you know, how if you look through a video camera, what would you see a super app person doing? You know, this is an exercise you can do with your leaders and ask them, like, what would they be doing? Because the video camera doesn't lie, right? They're taking food every day. They're taking a ride. They're ordering food in the ride. So they have all these, what's called in research, assumptions. Us as researcher, our job is to pull out those assumptions that underlie kind of what these kind of visions are, in a sense, and that vision values, right? Once we do that, once we know kind of what it looks like, that's what you can actually track in your data. You can actually see that show up. They're taking this number of rides, but then do those numbers mean anything to the direction of where the business is trying to go, right? So who cares if they're taking 20,000 rides every month if they're not buying any food, right? Like that's not maybe super app. So then there's a question of like why. So there's always a what, and then there's a why behind the what. Why are they
Exactly.
taking all of this, right? So that's where you can. There's different types of research to go in and maybe go in and ask those. You've identified a cohort or section of people in your data that continue to do what super app behavior means based on how you define that in your business. Then you can actually go deeper and ask those people. You can call them up, invite them for an interview, maybe fill out a survey answering that why they do the things that they do. And that what and that why tell a great story and give, you can then bring that back into the business and build around that, and also track that over time, see how well we're doing to meet set objectives. So that's kind of some ideas of how research shows up in the product world.
I love it. I love it. And maybe you can share with the viewers a little bit. How do you see the kind of the design thinking bit coming together with the big data bit, right? Because that was also a theme that I've been hearing recurring in last week's convo as well, for marketing, for example, but it could also be for product design or new features or discovering new value you want to create for customers who's using Service A. Could you actually roll out Service B and upsell them that, or would they actually want Service B more than Service A? So how do you, in a way, leverage the Designerly way of working in a tech company that already have data scientists and analysts and so on sitting and crunching the data? What is it that design can do for tech, and what is it maybe that designers need to do to be relevant in a tech company? Because you kind of came from Human Inc., a design thinking and innovation consultancy, into a tech firm, right? And onto another tech firm now in Salesforce.
Yeah, I think the trifecta of innovation, as you all know, as designers, you have your feasibility of X initiative or idea or strategy. You have your desirability from a user standpoint. You have your kind of customer desirability. So desirability, feasibility, and technical. Did I get it right? Desirability,
Yeah.
feasibility,
Viability and feasibility.
Yeah, I need a visual in front of me. I need a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Right.
We need the
Let me get
whiteboard,
the
right?
whiteboard over here.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
from, I think us as kind of product or strategy folk, our designer folk too. We do quite well with the desirability from a customer standpoint, and we might get into we might just pretty much stay there sometimes. So I think as a designerly kind of bunch who we're going to be looking at this, really encourage you to really look at this is tough, right? To really start to size your how big is that desirability? How often is it happening? How frequent? Put some sort of kind of quantification around it. It doesn't matter if it's you've talked to 5 users and 3 or 5 people said that. It gives some sort of directionality to your data, but also that gives you some way to then put a business case around it, right? If we solve this number of people as having this challenge, it could lead to us capturing this part of the market. That business language is going to really set you apart and really have you being able to. The thing is, when you're in a tech space, people don't speak the designer language. I'm sorry, but they don't. They really don't. And it's not like it's not that they don't speak the language you do, but they have the same kind of intention as you. We both want to create value for our users. We're just coming at it in different ways. So, and even then in the engineering side, right? People are thinking in release cycles, like when they're about to release their product. So when you give an insight, we need to say what kind of cycle or agile sprint is actually going to be affecting, because that's where their mind is. So being able to kind of know the language of your stakeholders from a business standpoint, PMs are thinking about kind of all of it at the same time. Your marketing folks, want to know what are the gotchas. If your research, it has this is what the customers want, but when I go out for the go-to-market message, what are the things that the research is saying, we should probably steer away from when we go to market with this product? What are the things we should double click on? So that's empathy. When you have a marketing message that says, hey, you listening to me. And guess who does the listening? Your kind of research folks, your designer folks. So those
Yeah.
are some ways you can leverage.
So that's where there's a strong value add from designers into tech companies. I think this is also something we have seen in working with large corporates, in a sense, is that initially I think a lot of designers and design thinkers felt that corporates needed to kind of understand the design way of working and adopt it, right? Which is a pretty non-empathetic and arrogant view, in my personal opinion, right? To expect everyone to become like you is probably not what collaboration is about and what empathy is about. And I think there is a need to find the sweet spot between corporate and large companies' way of working with these maybe more studio-based, typically smaller, design-driven, agile teams, right? How do we tie in the best of these practices in a way that still works for large organizations that need a bit of predictability, that needs some structure, that needs alignment also, because a lot of folks, more people are involved in larger companies than in startups. When they build fast digital MVPs and so on, it's a smaller team typically, right? At least initially. So I think that piece is quite interesting in terms of we call it human ink, right? What's kind of the creative part, and what's the structured, you can say more org part, the business part of it, right? And how do we as individuals who work as part of this system remember the human element, remember the customer element, insist on the pieces that creates value where it becomes too square, and if we do it the old way, we're going to get the old result. And when is it that we need to actually lean back and let other people lead and say, well, actually, we're good at operating this stuff, we don't need all this creativity right now, or at least can you give me more clarity, right? And that's maybe also where the language of metrics and numbers, linking the soft into something harder, is a big part of the answer to that.
Definitely. Yeah, meeting people where they're at. Again, I think, and it's even starts at the how you show up in your meetings, right? And this is not just a designer thing. This is a human thing. This is, in a remote world, our stakeholders, they need to be engaged in the way they want to be engaged, where they want to be engaged, at any time, in any place. So how do we leverage kind of synchronous conversation or asynchronous conversation in a synchronous meeting like this, right? Like imagine if you had 100 people on the call. Chris and I used to run sessions together where we'd have hundreds of people, right, at one time, and we'd be running around the room. Chris has his booming voice catching the ends of the space and the ends of heaven and earth here, and I'm running around the room. So can't do that anymore, right? But we can still have an infectious emotional connection to people through intentionality, being thoughtful in the way that we show up at a time. So practically speaking, really checking in on how folks are feeling. I mean, it might sound touchy-feely, this is, but that showing up and checking in on how someone's feeling and how you do that, again, from a cross-cultural context, it's not just by asking them in the verbal way. Maybe you show them a few emojis, right? Make it fun, make it light, and use that as data to actually read the room. Before, we could literally run around the room and read the room, actually hold people, touch people, and connect, look at someone in the eyes, see their body language, see them from the neck down. Now we don't want to know what's going on from the neck down, right? But it's not a big deal. But still, like that, not being able to see people's body language in a holistic sense does limit our ability to connect. And as we know, when we're not able to kind of connect at the heart, we're not able to connect in the head, and we're not able to kind of connect in our hands, in a sense, right? That alignment of those three things shows up in how we are able to produce and actually get work done. So again, I really challenge myself to say, hey, how can I be more intentional in these spaces where there's different language being spoken, but we all have the same goal? You have an agile kind of engineer. You have an actual person moving pixels and creating journeys and experiences. You have a researcher who's looking at more data, qual and quant. You have a PM who just says, get the thing out the door yesterday, right?
So, deadline.
But all those, with the commonality there is they're all humans. They're all humans. And I think that is what set me apart for sure at Salesforce. And you also have a place that really does, I am lucky that I have a place now that super, not now, even before, that really values that, and sees that as a competitive advantage. That's it's not anything new that Salesforce is our values are pretty public, and obviously our number one value is trust, and quite close to that is customer success. So it is all about our customers, and I think what I'm really trying to bring to the table is how do we again be intentional about how we connect with each other to serve our customers, and putting, Chris used to talk about, it's like a social bank, right? Like you invest in that social bank of your colleagues and your people around you, and that comes back to you, and it comes back to you. It really does. So it's been coming back to me for sure in my work at Salesforce, and I guess at some points I was like, I don't know, Chris, is that really true? I just want to like get the thing done. But I really have seen that pay off these days.
Yeah, so there's something around, like, I think a lot of people who are not part of tech think of tech as these kind of big, cold, IT geeky, data-driven companies where no one look at each other, they always look at a screen. But it sounds like in order for designers and researchers and analysts to help the company win through strategy, through the right product design, through the right customer experience being delivered, you actually need to build your personal stakeholder management skills. You need to, in a way, sell the value of the research to the stakeholders, and like you said, present it in the language that they speak, not that you speak, and not be so technical and nerdy about it that they don't get the joke, right? These are at least some of the things that we have seen. Maybe for those, I mean, probably most people know Salesforce, but there could be some viewers who don't know Salesforce. At a high level, what does Salesforce actually do, and perhaps building on that, also if you could share a little bit. I know you can't probably share on the confidential stuff you're doing, but what is kind of the user research function do, and how do you maybe at a high level work with product teams or leaders and so on?
Yes, yeah. Salesforce is really about making the kind of complicated things in enterprise software simple. And easy and fast to use. We're the kind of pioneers of low code, and low code basically means when you're building software for enterprise. Let's say you're trying to build an app for a field rep out in sales. How fast can you get that person out there? Right? Well, we know sales is all about timing and speed to market, and no one wants to spend time out building their software. So our founders really recognized how to do that 20 years ago, and really revolutionized the market around not just building a customer relation management tool, but a tool that helps you kind of build a CRM, as they call it, for you, right? Like, so there's for that's customized for your own business, and making that customization simple and straightforward. Of course, there's a lot of players and open the door for a lot of other again, competitors come in, but also Salesforce has really evolved itself to be about its customer 360, and that's basically a single source of kind of truth to really kind of drive success for your customers around sales, marketing, commerce. Even we have a platform, and that's all built on top of our platform, and so you can basically think about Salesforce as almost like an operating system for businesses of all shapes and sizes.
So this is quite interesting, because you kind of moved from a B2C fast-growing tech firm in Asia to an enterprise solution firm in California, right? I think most people would think of kind of these type of user research practices being more B2C focused. How does user research inform kind of the build of enterprise solutions? Like, because these are solutions that large numbers of people rely on to do that job every day, right? Whether it's accounting systems or logistics systems or HR systems or finance, sales tools, project collaboration tools. I mean, we use all these things, workplace, PeopleSoft, whatever. I mean, there are all these different solutions that people use, right?
Slack, yes.
So how does that? Oh yeah, sure. So how does these kind of design practices, research practices inform enterprise solutions, and how's that maybe a bit different from working with direct to consumer?
Yeah. I would say it's not so different in terms of the process and the practice.
Yeah, maybe
the process.
What does it look like roughly?
Yeah, the process. Yeah. I like to talk about research as a double diamond. I think our designer leaning researcher folks get that. Also research comes in multiple sizes and shapes. You have people who come in from the design side. You have people who come in from the academic side. Just giving a bit of context, there's multiple forms of researchers out there. So there's people who come from agency and things. Similar to the design field as well, it's always a kind of a circuitous path for people getting into the fields that we've been talking about. But in terms of the process, it is, I like to talk about research as in the kind of problem space, and that problem space is defined by who are we building for, right? Like, who are we building for? You call that a persona, call that a job performer. What makes those folks that we're building for successful, right? You call those outcomes in kind of an Ulrich or kind of outcome-driven innovation language there. And then you think about kind of, well, how do they value that success? Or how do they want that success to happen? You can think about that as kind of the experience of getting that success, right? You can have, someone who's trying to, in my world, trying to code something using a black and white surface, a black and white kind of text screen. Or they can have lots of colors and emojis in there in the way they code. And that, those are two different experiences. They're still getting the same job done, but those are two different experiences. And that does lead to different outcomes and product success potentially. So, but anyway, that is the divergent part of the kind of alligator mouth. The other side of the alligator's mouth is the convergent side, right? Where you're talking about kind of the how of the problem you're trying to solve. Okay. So for example, again, you're trying to build, a faster way to get your apps to market in the business context. So you have the person who's building it is someone who's maybe not so familiar with coding, but they have some idea of how to drag things around. So that's the who. They want to, really be able to connect two different business processes to some data. That's a legacy system, right? Cool. I get what their journey for that. They need to and they want to do it without any coding. And what's successful is for them is like speed to market. Did I talk about any products in that divergent space? I didn't. So the how is about the products. And of course, a lot of PMs are very much in the how. Hey, I've got this new product that's gonna, hey, I got this new
technology
idea
that can do it.
Yes, right. Yeah. And that is
for what need?
For what need, right? So that's usually what I'm asking. It's kind of for who and for what outcome and for the what kind of experience are we looking for? So jobs to be done, which kind of came from Clayton Christensen, who at Harvard, who really kind of built that framework out. So there's a lot of companies that use that kind of framework, and then once you've kind of gotten that data around, I call it the problem space, the divergent space, kind of filled out, you can then kind of go into kind of how do we solve that. And that's not to say you can't. Sometimes you can go the other way. Is a lot of times designer researcher folks get caught up in, oh, we don't know the persona, we don't know. That's fine. You can also start with a product and do a bit more Eric Ries style, lean, or Steve Blank kind of style of innovation, where you just have a quick, lo-fi prototype, go out and test it and see how that. Of course, that's
how do they behave?
how do they behave? Yeah. Yes. So that's in a sense the process of going from problem space to solution space, divergent to convergent. You can think about it like a double diamond, and you kind of go back and forth through that over and over until you kind of get to some kind of what we call product market fit. If you want to use the business model canvas kind of language there too. So so yeah, it's, I guess, to your point around enterprise work, I think the main difference I've found in enterprise work is it's just harder to get access to people to talk to, and that's across the business. And I found that our research and strategy, research and not just your strategy, but our research operations, the heartbeat of all the teams I've worked for, don't get enough credit for the work that goes into really recruiting, finding, and you can imagine in again, middle of Indonesia, where people obviously won't speak my language. There's also gender and power dynamics that I can't go in and speak to a lot of people. They're just not possible or appropriate for me to do that. So we need to work through a moderator and work through someone who actually has those contacts. So you can imagine that's a lot. So imagine, so in an enterprise kind of space, those contacts I need to speak with are people who actually maybe are also buying, like have large accounts behind them. So it's not just, every interaction is a bit more kind of, people need to be mindful of that. So building up kind of user databases of people to talk to is a really key approach in an enterprise context. And that's what our ops teams does in maintaining that. And they do so much more to really make our team, move like a well-oiled machine. So, but it is a nascent field, research ops, and I really encourage people to look at that field and encourage more people to go into it.
Right.
Yes.
So there's this kind of maybe also for the viewers to kind of invite them a bit into to your world, right? So there's basically this world of finding problems worth solving for either existing or potential customers, defining those problems worth solving, jobs to be done, experiences that they're looking for, and maybe also figuring out what experiences are they already getting? How can we differentiate ourselves from the other competitors, right? And then there's the kind of figuring out how to build relevant and testing relevant solutions early stage to continue to learn from users. And you're talking about the need to kind of maintain a strong research and design practice where you have access to sometimes hard to access customers. You have figured out ways to interview, ways to get data from these audiences that gives you reliable data. I would like to kind of also invite our viewers, whether you're watching this in real time or you're watching this as a recording afterwards, to please add your comments and questions. What are you seeing? Is there research practices you have seen work really well? Are there challenges that you're facing in crafting strategy? Are you not using research at all, but curious? What would you like to ask, or something we said that you hopefully disagree with? Please tag us and comment here. Now, kind of building on now you've done all this research. Are there any tricks to present this data to stakeholders? Let's say there's someone who's head of that enterprise product, for example, or someone who's head of that B2C customer segment in Indonesia. Are there any tricks to presenting that data in ways where it doesn't just become some fluff? Yeah, they've done the research, but I still know the thing I want to build. Because that's frankly where we see that leaders are still kind of learning how to leverage research more, because they typically think more of the thing to build than have a deep understanding of who needs what and why, right? And when. So they fall in love with a feature or with the technology they've seen at some expo, or they read an article, or a competitor have bought that thing, we should have one too. They shouldn't think that the only ones we can buy a big gun to, right? So sometimes there can be that kind of very kind of technology orientation. We should have digital transformation, right? So we should surely have some blockchain or some biometrics or whatever it might be, where maybe designers and researchers can be quite annoying to work with, because like, hold on, we have actually talked to customers, here's what they say, are you sure? Or if we do it, how can we tie it into what they care about, right? So what have you
Yeah.
seen in terms of presenting that data?
I think you got to have thick skin and a bit of a small ego, and not be afraid of getting your feelings hurt, right? Like I think research is it is tough and emotional because you in a sense are bringing some sort of change, and who likes change?
Mm,
Nobody, right? Come on,
mm,
we know that, right? So just being real, like let's be real with what you're doing, and meeting people again where they're at with
mm,
and how they might perceive you, and knowing that there isn't this like right way to do. We got to go from this is the thing with design thinking sometimes, guys. I love it, but it is a stepwise process. And that
yeah,
stepwise process sometimes gets people like kind of caught up
yeah,
in terms of this is the right way to do it. But look,
mm,
if your stakeholder is in the ideation phase, meet them there. Go there with them.
yeah.
And not to say that you have to do this is what strategic research is,
These
this is
seven
what
steps.
tactical
Yeah,
means.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, that is everything is strategic. If that's what is the outcome is going to be, you're going to drive
Mm,
a strategic measure. Um, so yeah, it's some tactics to your question though. Specifically, I found helpful is I like to really kind of do before I like when I'm onboarding into even a business, I like to do a listening tour. Like I like to do a
mm,
deep listening tour, and that specifically is like I literally have the same question to ask probably to 50 different stakeholders, and
mm.
I basically say, hey, uh, uh, for your X product area, because they know their product area for sure. What are your assumptions and what are your uncertainties? What are the things that if this thought that you have about your product, if it's not right, this whole thing falls apart, right? Um, that question is a tough one. Now, before that question, I have about 20 slides of like, here's who I am, here's what I've done. People, I think researchers sometimes are afraid to really talk about themselves in a way that they can just kind of level set. This is another human being. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. Sometimes I think we kind of are used to being a bit more service, and sometimes when we've been given a seat at the table, we don't really sit down. We still kind of like
Mm.
designers too. We kind of like sit still lightly sit on the chair, or already ready to get out of the chair. Don't want to raise our hands and be opinionated about something. So you have an opinion. They want to hear your opinion about what they're
The value
missing.
add, yeah. Mm.
Yes. And what am I missing, right? But that does come after a bit of you sharing about who you are, and not showing up as just a service provider, but as a partner, and with an
Right.
opinion.
So there's a power
Um,
question there as well, I guess.
yes.
In we've seen all these global tech firms who have had huge wins from leveraging design methods for research and creativity and innovation. Some companies even outside the tech world, like Pepsi, have their chief design officer, and I mean and that's been a big trend around this, right? Chief digital officers, CX heads, and so on, right? So there's been this kind of movement where certain parts of the corporate world have made it official that we need people to bring in this type of expertise. And in those organizations, they decided not to make it a small sub department reporting to someone who reports to a C, but actually
Mm.
to give them a C and say, you're actually powerful here. You can make some calls. Of course, some of the folks I've spoken to also say that, as much as they have the C, their C is smaller than the CFO or the COO or so on, right? That they're still relying on all the other senior leaders to create their value, because they're more kind of the customer question goes across the whole value chain, from product, marketing, sales, fulfillment, after sales support, whatever, operations, HR, right? What are your thoughts on, like, is that a trend we're going to see more of? Do you think, like, 5 years from now, even in the more conservative market spaces that isn't maybe tech, are we going to see chief design officers, the design need to have that formal power to be respected, or should we be the coolies kind of bringing the insight? Sorry, I'm here. Here's what I found. Don't kill me. You may want to use it. You may not.
Yes. Yeah. I think we're going to still get a bit of both. But
Mm,
I know what I would like to have. I can't speak for anyone else, nor can I, predict the future. But I know that definitely data is a factor of production. It is something that, you know, and it's the speed in which and the quantity of data that's out there, and who can do something with it the fastest. And I think that the speed of research and how the translation of those insights into usable, meaningful insights. I'm seeing a lot of tools come out that are, have some value proposition of, oh, we can survey your users in a specific point in the product journey and increase survey completion rates by 30%, which that is a great thing, right? We can reduce the cost of recruiting and scheduling and paying and do that all in one platform. So I think they're gonna see a lot more tools like that. And then using certain machine learning and AI and again, like this meeting right now, transcript, like everything is gonna be every meeting is gonna be online, every user interview is online, so there's gonna be data created from that in a text form that can be analyzed in a very kind of structured way. So I'm curious about kind of machine learning for analysis. Of course, human observed and before it actually sees light of day. And there is also this notion of ethics that I'm seeing come out of research, and it is a big topic around the world, but also I'm seeing in the States specifically around who we're talking to. Being able to talk to groups that are representative of your population. Because if you don't, guess what? You're going to make a product that doesn't, misses out on half your population. Like the thing doesn't fit around the finger of someone because, look, everyone has different size fingers. You have a product that doesn't work anymore. Sorry, it's not just about it is about diversity. It is about inclusion. But it's also about you're missing out on your business initiative. So that is something I'm seeing. Another thing I'm seeing is very, very much for companies to grow, they got to get their own stuff together inside of the business, right? Like how we do different HR and finance. Data is also, again, just as important as a factor of production as your finance unit, right? So you got to take as good care of that, ensure that ship up so that it scales at the same maturity rate as your company. So being able to know where you're at, where you're at in the maturity journey from a data standpoint. And, there's a lot of models out there, but if you're are you in the walking stage of your data? Are you in the crawling stage? Are you in the, kind of running stage? You're in the sprinting stage. And what does that mean? There's no, what I'd say is get a model off the shelf and define it for yourself. What does those mean? Those phases mean? And generally speaking, you could say, when you first getting started out, you're probably just trying to ship something and get to market as fast as you can, which is great. But then that's maybe more usability testing, a little bit, just making sure the big boulders of usability are moved out of the way, so no one they can actually get their task done with the product. And then as you start to instrument your product, you start to really, not just one person doing research or design or whatever. You have a team, and it's now not just a team; it's kind of everyone's job. It's not just it's a part of who we are as a company. You start, and then
that's when the data culture starts emerging in a sense.
Yes,
right?
the culture, and then you're starting to again move metrics, not necessarily ship the product. And again, those metrics is about culture. Those metrics reflect our culture. I like how you said that.
So there's this notion that for companies that are moving into a more you can say data-driven way of operating, or a new more data-driven way of building new stuff, because that's both the kind of shaping the world through new products, and there's operating them efficiently and scaling them, right? And the finding the problem and finding the solution and then scaling it, right? Maybe initially they will look at the very kind of traditional industry metrics that at least that's what we have seen many companies say, yeah, we have data. But when they then show the data, it's very much kind of an inside out view of the world. How much money are we making on this? How much they're buying, how much attrition or churn we have. We know those things, but they don't know why. and they don't know what else is going on in these consumers' lives. What else are they buying? What else are they spending their time on? What are they afraid of? What are they excited about? How big or small is their family? Where do they move around physically? What are the things they hate? What are the things they love? And so on, right? And I think from an innovation standpoint and design standpoint, that's where I guess, in a way, designers and researchers meet with data scientists, and where we can bring that human curiosity into very scalable way of learning and knowing about your customers. That's really where the power comes together, right? So that's at least the space that I've gotten very curious about, and why we have partnered a few different companies that work with data and technology, because that's not our forte, but we can bring something to them that they're excited about. So that's also maybe where collaboration, either inside your company or externally, can be very valuable, right? And getting the different types of geeks to find a shared language, I guess, right?
Well, just on that point around shared language and learning culture, like, I mean, what is your, that's something there's a data part, but there's also getting people to align and come together and say that I'm going to tie my individual success or my team success to learning and learning how I can move this metric. So like, what have you learned around how to kind of shift that to like, hey, I'm ready to be a learning organization, and how long have you seen that take to go from shipping a feature to like moving a metric, and the learning kind of a muscle that needs to be built within the culture?
Yeah, I think it varies a bit from company to company. Also, they start at different maturity levels. A maturity model that we typically use to identify where on the journey is your company. Maybe there's some people that are far ahead, the progressive guys you just hired in from outside your industry, the outliers in your company, maybe the research team, the chief digital officers team, and so on. But if you look at on the wide number of people, maybe actually you're not that progressive, right? And there's a bit of diversity inside the company. So it's probably not one culture, but a bunch of different kind of subcultures inside the company. Second part, I guess, is when you if you can marry the design language, the human-centered language, with the corporate way of working, that's very powerful. So for example, you can set up processes where, well, we're not gonna consider a new product proposal or budget request unless there is some user data, either existing user behavior, focus groups, in-depth interviews, some personas built, a journey map. We need something like that, and therefore we have some assumptions. Second, we're not going to give you a ton of money. We want you to run an experiment. We want you to run an MVP first and build maybe 100% of 10% of the solution, meaning we'll build one feature that we can launch, and let's just launch that first and learn from that, right? And then maybe do more research to say what should be the next feature. So maybe we have the research, we just need to roll out the next second most valuable feature, right? So there are ways that you can kind of make working with creativity a discipline that doesn't feel so scary for people that are kind of preferring moving from left to right and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You can create space for the openness inside something that is structured enough that you have the discipline and it doesn't go all over the place and become scary and confusing for a large organization, right? So I think that the learning in that sense is tied to business. It's not I'm learning for the sake of learning. I'm learning because we need to make the next feature as successful as the first one, right? We don't want to have a failure here. So I think that the curiosity is another part of it, that being open to that. Maybe I have been in SME banking or health insurance for 15 or 20 years doesn't mean that I know exactly how people feel in Kelantan in Malaysia or in JB or in Singapore, right? That actually you can be an industry expert in many ways, but you also need to be very humble because the world is changing very quickly and most people are not like you. So the humility of when you see the data, being able to accept the data and that's another piece where I think that sometimes it hurts, right? I remember one team we worked with who were very surprised when senior leaders had bought some technology solutions and it didn't work, and we got some user research done, and the users frankly hated it, right? And they were just like almost white in the face, and they were like, But they had,
Surprising, yes.
yeah,
Come
but
on.
to their courage, they came round and they said, "This is
Mm,
amazing. We found out about this. Now that we're here, what can we do to get out of here, right? And what can we
yeah,
do to move the needle, like you said, right?" And
yeah.
then some of the young folks that we were working with in their team, we used some design methods, and they went out and found actually some examples from Salesforce. Funny enough, so they looked at
Oh,
a completely different industry, right? This was in banking. They looked at
mm,
Salesforce and said, could we use like an onboarding widget that can show me how to make some dummy transactions before doing it for real, right? So this was one example of kind of how do you create that curiosity or learning, whatever you want to call it, in a team
mm,
that's actually working on a business project. I think that's a lot easier than to get busy senior people to want to have a learning culture. It sounds great, but they're like, yeah, but where's the money, right? So I think that's the hard part, especially now with COVID and recession.
mm.
Those are some of the
Love it.
things we've been working at. We're kind of
Thank
coming
you.
towards the close here, Axel.
Sure.
Maybe last thoughts from you in terms of where do you think maybe. Where do you think these spaces are gonna evolve? If you were to put your money on something, where do you think new things are gonna come from? Are we gonna see more things coming maybe from the integration between the body, the biology of human beings and technology? Can technology give us empathy so that my laptop knows how I'm feeling? I'm stressed on the Zoom call, it can read my, and therefore Salesforce can better help me, or my internet banking calls up the support line, or the bot prompts automatically. Is that where a space where we're going, where technology can become that empathetic, or have you got some other wild bits I'm not going to hold you to? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think again, if someone tells you they're predicting the future, then you probably should run away from them very fast. So, and I think everyone wants to predict the future right now. It's just so
Yeah.
uncertain. It's just very human nature to.
Yeah.
But I think I think we should be all more self-aware. I think use this time to really, yes, technology is there to help you be more self-aware, but I think you can use the old technology of just really kind of slowing down to speed up, as we used to say back in the day in Human Inc. Right. So, and that way of slowing down to speed up is through. I know my personal story around this is just like, I didn't know, hey, how much the year had really taken out of me until I had a pretty a death in the family recently, and that really kind of I don't think you should don't follow my lead and let something like that happen till you start to slow down. And I think through that slowing down, I started to really start to appreciate and started to see how much I was actually holding. And so that letting things go, you're starting to, you create space for new possibilities, and reinvention. So, and I think that's showing up in my work now, really being able to see. I think once you start to let things go, you can see things more clearly, and maybe people start saying that's what they see as the future. But I think you're just seeing what was already in front of you, again, more vividly. So at work, like this notion of hey, we want to move more metrics versus ship features, like that call to action, whether the business is ready for it or not. Not just talking about Salesforce, but that kind of the energy you need for that, you got to stop doing some stuff to actually
Mm.
create new things.
Yeah.
So by letting things go, you're able to create new things. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You think to do new things, you got to like pile it on top of what you're already doing. No, you actually have to let something go, and then let that new thing kind of bubble up, and and then it'll kind of land in your lap. I know that's a lot of like kind of soft talking, whatever, but it is very practical, and I think slow down and see what happens. That's my
Yeah.
message. Slow down and see what happens.
Yeah.
It
I
can't
love
be
that.
nothing good. Yes.
No, so you can say that for us to be open to the insights from research to inform future direction or strategy, where we want to win, how we're going to win, we need to actually maybe that's what researchers and designers can bring, is that short pause where we breathe,
Mm.
where we
Yes.
sense, where we take a
Yes.
step back from the battle, and say what's actually going on, where do we actually want to be, and why do we want to be there? Why is that such an exciting space for us? If that's where we want to go, what does it take to get there? What do we need to stop doing? Not just buying a new thing, but what's the old thing we should throw out? The old couch, it's got to go. We love it. We had it for many years, but it's got to go.
Smelly now. That's
I'm talking about my couch now, actually.
Mine's over here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm super grateful that you dialed in. I know it's late your time, so thanks for sharing with our viewers. Again, a reminder for everyone: please pop your comments in here. Share this talk with anyone you think could find it useful. If some of you felt this was too soft and people or whatever, good on you. You challenged yourself, right? And maybe we need to embrace new language, new ways of thinking. So thank you so much for joining to all the viewers. Thanks, Axel, for being here. I look forward to at some point fly over the pond and come and visit you in San Fran, or host you here for some good Makan again. So